Welcome to the Traveler's Mindset Podcast. I'm Salem, and I'm here to help you discover yourself while discovering the world. In each episode, I'll share practical traveling tips and entertaining travel stories, all while sharing the powerful mindset and self-help tools I've learned along the way. Whether you're a seasoned explorer or dreaming of your first solo trip, this podcast is your guide to personal growth, resilience, and living life to the fullest. So pack your curiosity, open your heart, and get ready to embark on a journey that will reshape your mind and soul. Welcome to the Traveler's Mindset, where adventure meets self-discovery and your best self awaits. Happy Wednesday, everyone, and welcome back to the Traveler's Mindset Podcast. My name is Salem, and I'm your host. And if you tuned into last week's episode, I just want to say a humongous thank you because I can't believe the amount of love and support that I received on that first episode. This is something that has been really near and dear to my heart for a while now, and it just solidifies that I'm doing a little bit of good and helping some people out with the fact that you guys were just so kind and supportive. And I am just so grateful from the bottom of my heart, truly. I'm now recording in what I'm calling my recording studio. I have a loft at the top of my bedroom here in Hawaii, and I can see the ocean, and it's just this private little room, and it's a perfect place to escape the noise and to just be in my little bubble and be able to share stuff up here with you. And I'm sipping on some tea and just having a wonderful morning. I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to start all these episodes, but I do just want to tell you some of the mindful things I'm starting to do being here in Hawaii to make me be where my feet are and to make me feel more present, because that's one thing about me is that I struggle with being where my feet are. And I had this epiphany the other day, and I wrote about it in my journal, where I was like, I wanted to be here. I was craving to be back here on this island, and now I'm like feeling anxiety and feeling fear because I feel like it's really hard to be here right now. Money is really tight, not making as much money as I was last time I was here, and it's just a lot of uncomfortable feelings. There's a lot of fear behind it, I think, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Today's episode is all about fear, how to overcome fear, why we feel fear, and how to move past it. How to use fear as a kick in the butt to do the things that you love, because fear is something that we all feel, but only the people that understand it can use it to their advantage and can use it in a way that amplifies their life instead of limiting their life and limiting themselves. So a quick update about the microphone situation. I got a pop filter for this microphone, so we're going to see if that improves the audio at all. I'm literally recording in Adobe Audition, so my recording software is great. If this still sounds not up to par, I will be purchasing a new microphone for the next episode, but just bear with me. Again, we're still figuring it all out. Let's get into this episode all about fear. So I know you've heard the saying, the greatest fear of all is fear itself. To be honest, it's a very true saying. Many of us are scared to feel fear because we want to be seen as this superhuman who isn't scared of anything. I know that sounds silly when I say it out loud, but I bet that there's a time where you genuinely felt fear or you were genuinely scared to do something, but you suppressed all of those emotions because you didn't want to seem like a coward or that you couldn't take it from someone else. I know that I've been there and I've done that, and I've suppressed all the fear that I was feeling, and sometimes it can be good. Sometimes that can be the number one way to get over the fear and see that you weren't really scared of it to begin with. But other times it's not so healthy to do that, especially if it's a reoccurring fear or something that is really deeply ingrained in you and something that you're really scared of. I think that it's important to note that fear is such a natural thing we all feel. I know that it seems like some people are absolutely fearless. That's not true. You can even talk to big wave surfers, which I have done just from traveling, and people that surf Nazare or people that surf Jaws, they are still scared. I have talked to so many surfers and they're like, yeah, when I see a big wave behind me, I'm terrified of it. But they just feel the fear and they do it anyways. And that is a quote that I have lived by to live my life the way that I have the last 3 years. I've accepted that fear is a natural thing that we all feel, and I've accepted that it's a normal thing to feel. But what I don't do is let fear stop me from reaching my goals or trying new things. Because when we're starting something new, being scared is a natural response. When we're stepping into the unknown and things are not clear to us and things are not routine, it becomes scary. We love routine. We love consistency. We aren't built to endure tons of change all the time. Like I said in my last episode, change is one of the most constant things in life. And change and fear go hand in hand with each other. So being able to accept that, yes, these things are commonplace and that we all experience them is important. But it's also important to see that change and fear don't have to limit our lives and don't have to put a halt on all the things that we want to do. You see, the more you expose yourself to the things that ignite that fear in you, the more acclimated to fear you become. It's like exposure therapy, which is something that I've referred to a lot here recently when talking to friends and other things like that. I don't know why, but I read this article about exposure therapy. And now I'm like, wow, maybe we should just expose ourselves and just rip off the Band-Aid to everything that we're scared of. But of course, that's not 100% always the way to go about it. But really, when you feel fear, or if you're just fearful of anything, if you just expose yourself to it over and over and over again, you become more acclimated to it and it just becomes your normal. With traveling, that's exactly what I did. I remember the first flight that I got on. I had been traveling with my really good friend Esmeralda, and she had left me, but I wanted to keep traveling. She had to go back to the States. And I booked a ticket to go to Italy. And it was my first time in a hostel by myself. It was my first time flying by myself. Well, no, it wasn't my first time flying by myself, but it was my first time traveling. It was my first time being a solo traveler. And I would be lying if I didn't say I was terrified to step into that hostel. But the thing is that I wasn't terrified of the act of going to a hostel and staying there. I was scared of the unknown. I was scared that I wouldn't feel accepted or welcomed or loved by all these people that were at this hostel. I was afraid that I wouldn't fit in, or that I would just be this weird girl walking around alone and that everyone else would have friends. And it was all these projected fears that I had made up in my mind, but it's also because it was the unknown. It was something I had never done before. It was scary. But what I did on the plane ride to Italy was give myself this huge pep talk and basically just talk myself out of being scared. I remember saying to myself that I was feeling scared, that I was feeling fear. But the only option I had was to just do it anyways. The only other option if I didn't do it was to buy a ticket back home. And to me, that was not at all an option. I had spent all the money to come here. I wanted to experience Italy. And I knew that the only way for me to do this was to follow through and was to let go of the fear that I was feeling. And that, to this day, was one of my favorite trips that I've ever taken. Make a long story short, I was only going to be in Venice, Italy for about 3 days, and I ended up staying for about 2 weeks, which if you've been to Venice, you know that is crazy because you can get Venice done in a day. But I just met the most amazing people the entire time I was there. I was constantly making new friends. I was at the best hostel ever. And it just was one of those things where I'd meet new people and they'd be like, please extend, please stay. And I would just stay with them. And then it became like a local in Venice because I was constantly walking around. But the moral of that story is that once you let go of the unknown and once you let go of your fear, the world blossoms and opens up in ways that you can't even imagine. So I don't know about you, and maybe it's the Virgo in me, but whenever I get some scientific logic behind why we do the things we do, it makes me understand it that much more. So we're going to go into some very brief science as to why we feel fear and understanding where it stems from. So as we all are very aware, feeling fear is not a bad thing. It's, if anything, a really good thing and a very natural response we all have. Fear is a natural instinct that helped our ancestors survive. It helped us develop these very instinct survival modes. So having fear keeps us alive. If we didn't have fear, we would all probably be goners. We would all do very silly things. We would put ourselves in risky situations because we wouldn't have that fear to tell us to stop or to rethink. So what happens to our bodies and our brains when we feel fear? When we're talking about fear on a physical level, our bodies help us adapt really quickly so we can respond in the best way possible to the situation. And I know you've heard this before, but we either fight, flight, or freeze. That means you either stay and you fight against whatever that current situation is, or you run away. You do whatever feels best in that moment. But what actually happens to our bodies is that we get flooded with adrenaline. And that's when, people tell you that they couldn't believe they did what they did in that moment, but it's our body's natural response to the stimuli that's been given to us at that moment. Your heart rate rises, your blood vessels constrict, and every single stress hormone that you can think of is released into our bodies. Also, our nervous systems get very, very tense and very out of whack. So you can see that being in a constant state of fear is really hard on your bodies. It's actually incredible that our bodies can have this response in such a quick way. But if your body is in a constant state of fear, it can become really dangerous to your overall health. Most of the time, our fears turn into stress and anxiety, but our bodies don't understand the difference between when fear is real or when fear is false. So when we're thinking about fear, is the fear that we're feeling real or perceived? For example, the real fear is the one that keeps us from falling off a cliff, while false fear is the one that keeps us stuck. A better way to decipher the two might be to think as real fear as danger. But don't get me wrong, this false fear, which I have air quotes going around, is still a really important tool to help us grow. But only if you're aware that it is your thinking in a future tense. Your false fear is a perception. It's an idea of what could happen. It's you being out of the present moment and projecting into the future. For example, false fear is you worrying that your spouse might cheat on you or that you're going to run out of money. It's the fear of the what if or the what might happen. And of course, these fears can still be caused by something that's currently happening. Maybe, to stick with the example of your spouse cheating, maybe they are giving subtle hints that maybe they are, or maybe you saw a risky text, or maybe you heard something from a friend. So now this idea is turning into something you're afraid of. But it's still a what if. It's still an unknown. It's still something that might be happening, but you're not sure if it really is. And like I said earlier, most of the time, these types of fears turn into stress and anxiety. But our bodies do not understand the difference between this real or false fear. So your brain and your nervous system respond just like they would to a real threat. A lot of us, subconsciously and consciously, are always on a low level in a state of fear. If you're constantly worrying or if you're constantly feeling anxiety, you are in a state of fear. Even if it doesn't feel overwhelming all the time, your body is still under that stress. You're still putting your nervous system into that stress out mode. And you're still releasing all those hormones. And it's really hard on your body. Like, let's really think about that. You know what it feels like to feel genuinely scared of something. And you know what happens to your body. You know, you are very present in that moment. I would say most of the time in the moment, a very negative, scary experience. If you are always feeling that way on a low level, even if you're just waking up with worry in the morning or waking up feeling anxiety, there's a bit of fear in that. So your body's constantly just in this unrelaxed state and it's not able to properly rest or properly rejuvenate. And you're always kind of in this fight or flight mode. Let's look at the word fear so we can really dissect this and you can really understand it. When you look at the word fear as a noun, the definition is an unpleasant emotion caused by the belief that someone or something is dangerous, likely to cause pain, or is a threat. Now, let's look at the word fear as a verb. It says, to be afraid of someone or something as likely to be dangerous, painful, or threatening. So, this can be looked at more so as false fear, a perceived notion that something could be scary. When you look at these two definitions, although they are the same thing, there's a few things that stick out that are differences. As a noun, they use the word emotion, that it's an emotion caused by the belief. And as a verb, it is to be afraid that something is likely. So although being afraid is the condition of fear, feeling fear isn't a choice, but being afraid is something we choose to do. An example to make this make sense is, let's say you encounter a spider. It surprises you out of nowhere. It's a sneak attack. You lift up a blanket. I don't know, would spiders be on a blanket? You lift up a rock and there's this huge spider and it startles you and it scares you. That's your fear. That moment in time is fear. That is like your fight or flight. Your brain is thinking, is this spider going to hurt me? Is it poisonous? Is it going to jump on me? Do I need to run away? That is feeling fear. Feeling that in that moment is not a choice. It's just an instant reaction that your body does. But then, after you had that experience, now you're afraid of spiders. Now, since that initial experience, you have developed a fear and you are currently always afraid of spiders. You identify with being afraid of spiders. That is something you choose to do. Feeling fear is not a choice, but continuing to be afraid of something that was caused by an initial fear is a choice. With traveling, what I always hear, people are scared to travel alone because they've heard scary stories of people traveling alone, or they've traveled alone and it went horribly, and so now they have developed a phobia, for lack of a better word. I think that when you can separate feeling fear and being afraid is when you fully understand and you allow fear to come into your life, but you don't see it as this negative experience. You see it as something that can teach you and something that can improve your life if you use it in a beneficial way. So is it fear or is it our intuition? This is something that I hear all the time. It's a constant question in the self-help world. So your intuition is also known as your gut feeling. We've all felt it. A lot of people think that when they're feeling scared, it's just their gut trying to tell them something, trying to send them some message that you shouldn't do this. I hate to break it to you, but our gut feelings cannot tell the future. Although our guts are like our second brain and we should listen to our gut feelings every time we feel them, you are only feeling a gut feeling when you feel it in that very moment. A gut feeling gives you an immediate answer. It's not something that can give you an answer to something in the future. For example, let's say you are alone at Walmart and a stranger walks up to you and you're feeling very off about it. That is a gut feeling. If you feel like that person's energy is not good, if you feel like they're threatening you, even if they don't say anything, if you feel unsafe in that moment, that is a gut feeling and you 100% should listen to it. But let's say you are about to move to another country and you're having second thoughts and you're thinking to yourself, maybe this is my gut telling me this isn't the right choice. That is you projecting a future outcome that may or may not happen. And it is not a gut feeling, and it is more than likely not true. That is your fear of the unknown stepping in and trying to ruin what could potentially be a great thing. If you're worried about something that is in the future, that is your ego being scared of the unknown. You'll know the difference between fear and intuition because when fear is involved, making a decision becomes really challenging. To stay on to that example that I just said about someone coming up to you at Walmart, if it was fear and not your gut feeling, you would linger around. You wouldn't instantly be trying to get out of the situation. You wouldn't feel like it's an immediate threat. And yeah, of course, in that sort of situation, there is fear involved. But that would be your gut talking. It feels clear, it feels calm, it feels right. There's no second guessing, I need to get away from this person. But with fear, sticking with the example I said earlier about moving to a different country, I bet that's the only thing you would be thinking about. When fear is involved in a decision like that, it becomes really challenging to make a decision. You're constantly going back and forth. You're always confused, you're probably asking for advice from others, and you're not listening to yourself. It becomes a really loud and really urgent thing. And I 100% was feeling this way whenever I was trying to decide if I wanted to come back from Hawaii. And I did this twice. Whenever I was living in Bali, I was trying to decide if I should move back to Maui or if I should go to Portugal. And then when I was in Portugal, I was trying to decide if I should move to Maui or if I should move somewhere else. And I remember at the hostel I was working at in Bali, I asked a group of random strangers to come into this movie room that we had that had a whiteboard. And I made a list of pros and cons in front of them about me moving to Portugal versus me moving to Maui because I could not make a decision. But it was because I was nervous and I was scared about what decision would be the right decision or the wrong decision. I remember in that moment, the fact that I had to ask a lot of other people and I couldn't make a decision on my own was the number one sign that I had a lot of fear around the decision. And that is when I had to let go and realize that no matter what decision you make, there's no right or wrong. If you're trying to decide between moving to two different places or taking two different jobs, if there is a equal amount of interest in both places, and if there's an equal amount of this could feel really good either way, there's no wrong decision. You're going to do what you're supposed to do. You're going to meet the people you're supposed to meet, and you're going to learn the things that you're supposed to learn. When we see decisions as one is good and one is bad, or one is better than the other, we see them as unequal. We look at it to the universe as though we're going to be punished if we choose one or not the other. And that's just simply not true. You're not going to be punished for choosing one decision over the other. I'm referring to instances that are pretty neutral in consequences. You're not going to be punished by choosing one decision or the other, and you're not going to miss out on the things that are meant for you either way. Yeah, if I decided to move to a different place right now, I would be having different experiences than the ones I'm having here, but I'm already meeting amazing people here. I'm already doing amazing things that I wouldn't be able to do in a different place. So you have to accept the duality of life, and that no matter what you choose, there's always going to be pros and cons, and there's always going to be positives and negatives. But you have to accept that and understand that the universe or God or whatever you refer to is not going to punish you for whatever you decide to choose. And I think that that's where a lot of my fear stemmed from when trying to make this decision to move. So how do we feel fear, accept it, and let it flow through us? The number one tip, and the only tip that I really want to give you, is to accept that you feel fear. I feel like this is such a simple thing to say, and you're like, well, duh. But the thing is that we hide the fact that we feel fear so often. If you don't even realize it, it's on a subconscious way, but we hide the fact that we feel fear because it's embarrassing to us sometimes to feel fear. No matter if it's legitimate fear or if it's a perceived fear, a lot of us don't want to admit that we feel fear. But the moment that you accept that fear is with you, it kind of just takes a weight off your shoulder. What I do every single time I am feeling fear is I say, fear is visiting right now. Or I say, I am feeling fear. And I say it out loud. It's like taking a breath of fresh air. It's like, okay, yes, thank God, I accepted it. And now, since I got over that first hump of accepting it, I can move on. But here's the number one thing you can't do is you don't need to associate with it. You don't need to associate with your emotions. Instead of saying, I am scared, say, I feel scared. Don't associate it with your being because you are not your emotions. Before all the Inside Out movies came out, this was something that I always practiced, was seeing my emotions as separate entities. Sometimes I would give, like in my brain, I could see how they looked. I just made them their own person because it helped me not identify with them because you are not your emotions. Even if you feel joy, even if you feel pain, if you feel fear, whatever you feel, you are not your emotions. They are just temporary things coming for a visit, and you get to decide if they get to stay around or if they get to give you their message and then bop out and go to the next place. So another quote from a different author, Elizabeth Gilbert. You guys know her from Eat, Pray, Love. She is the author of that book, but she's also the author of many others, and one of her really good books that I adore is called Big Magic, and it's about fear and how it works right alongside creativity and how to not allow your fear to stop you from living a life that you love and being creative and exploring what there is to explore. And one of the examples that she provides and that she uses in her own life is, imagine you're in a car and creativity is in the passenger seat and fear is in the back seat. Fear is allowed to be there. Fear is allowed to hang out with you in creativity, but fear is not allowed to have a say in where you guys go. Fear is not allowed to touch the radio. Fear is not allowed to change the AC. But most importantly, fear is never allowed to drive. And when you think about things like this, you get this acceptance of fear is there. Most of the time, fear is always there, but it's not allowing fear to take control of what is currently happening and not letting fear dictate what is going to happen. Another quote that I live by, as you can see, I'm a very quotey girl, is feel the fear and do it anyways. This is another popular one that I know people will probably have written up on their mirror. It is a good one because it's one of those things that we can all relate to. Yes, something is scary. Yes, that you're afraid of the unknown. We all are. But just do it anyways, because what do you have to lose? You are going to be more upset with yourself for not trying the things that you always wanted to try because fear stopped you. Of course, things might not go as planned. Things might not work. You might fail. And the idea of that is scary, but that's the thing. It's just an idea. And 99% of the time, all the things that you're scared of and all the things that you're worrying about don't play out the way you think they will anyways. Instead of expecting the worst, let's start expecting the best. Let's start trusting that the universe has this planned out for us and that you have to just take the leap and it's all going to fall into place. Instead of always being in the state of this isn't going to work or I'm scared that I'm going to fail, let's expect that we're going to do well and be okay, even if it doesn't turn out the way that we want it to. Because I promise you, even if things don't turn out the exact way you expect them to, there's going to be a learning lesson in it, and you're probably going to be okay with the outcome either way. The next thing is to remember that fear is temporary. Fear is a temporary emotion, just like all of our other emotions are, just like I mentioned earlier. Something that helps me is seeing fear and giving it sympathy. I know that this sounds a little silly, but whenever fear comes around and I am feeling scared, I take a deep breath and I kind of thank fear for being there for me. Because that's the thing. Your emotion of fear is just trying to keep you safe. They're just trying to do this job that they think they have of keeping you safe and keeping you protected from something that you feel is a danger. Fear isn't trying to be mean and isn't trying to cause your whole life to be horrible. Fear is just trying to do its job. It's just trying to keep you safe. And whenever you can see fear as a friend instead of an enemy, you can politely decline fear's advice or fear's guidance. Whenever fear comes into me, I always say, thank you for being here with me. Thank you for trying to keep me safe and trying to keep me protected. But I don't need your services right now. I am going to take this leap on my own, and I am not going to let you stop me. And you can honestly have a polite conversation with fear because you're friends with it. You understand its purpose, and you understand that it's just trying to do its job, and it's just trying to keep you safe. Don't be scared of fear. Don't be scared of feeling it. Invite it in, but be able to say no when you need to say no. The other 3 little things is to just meditate, journal, and to talk it out. Meditation is something I've been practicing for a really long time. And to be honest, sometimes it's way better than other times. Being back in Hawaii, I've been really on a meditation grind, but when I was traveling, it was really hard for me to find the space and the time to meditate. And honestly, I just didn't make time for it. But I will say that meditation helps me be present with how I'm feeling and kind of just make myself be quiet and to see that what's going on in my brain, to kind of organize my emotions and to understand that it's all temporary and that most of it isn't true anyways. And that's another thing. If meditation isn't something that resonates with you, journal or pray or talk to a close friend or talk to a therapist. All of these things are tools that are at your disposal. The final little piece of advice I have for you is something I mentioned earlier, and it's just to lean into fear. Lean into the unknown and practice letting go of fear. Do the things that scare you and really make your fear bone strong. That's something that I say is that I'm not really scared to do a lot of things anymore because my fear bone is really strong. I just have done things that scare me and I have accomplished them and I have excelled at many of the things that I thought I wouldn't excel at. Once you do something that scares you, you start to build this confidence behind it. You start to see yourself as this new person that can do scary and hard things. When you finally prove to yourself that you can do it, you're kind of unstoppable. Like I said with my trip to Italy, after that trip was over, I was a reborn human, I felt like. I was like, wow, this solo traveling life is the life for me. Like, I feel so confident in myself and in my abilities, my problem-solving skills. My confidence increased tenfold because I finally proved to myself that I could do something that was scary. And once you prove to yourself that you are not afraid anymore, your entire life just opens up to this new realm of all these possibilities. And I promise you, all these opportunities will start falling into your lap because you're finally opening up to the universe and to God and saying, I am open and I am now available for all of these new opportunities, these new ideas to come to me because I'm no longer scared of them. On the other side of fear is everything that you could ever dream of. And it's up to you to make sure you find it and you get there. Thank you for tuning in to this little episode about fear. I hope that this was helpful for you guys. And just know that all of these episodes are so helpful for me to talk about my emotions as well and to remind myself of these practices that have helped me get this far in life because it's really easy to forget how you feel, especially in scary moments. So if you guys enjoyed this episode, please, please, please leave a review, share it on social media, message me, do whatever you want to do. Leaving a review really helps new podcasts rank, and it's really important to me to be able to keep helping you guys and to allow this podcast to grow in any way possible. So it would mean so much to me if you could do that. And if you want to keep up with me or have any questions about the podcast or have any recommendations on what you want to hear next, please head over to my social media. My Instagram is at Salem A Hair. That is where I'm the most active, and I try to answer all of my DMs. So please go over there and chat. And if you like this podcast, we can talk about it on there too. So I cannot wait to see you guys next Wednesday, where we'll be talking about a new topic. So have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you guys next week. Peace out.